We want to call to order this special session. We're going to do things just a little bit in reverse this evening. At this time, I'd like to get a motion to adjourn into executive session. So moved. Second. The City Council of Lampasas, Texas will meet and close executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551 as follows. Section 551.071, consultation with attorney by telephone and or in person concerning matters with the attorney as a duty and responsibility to report to governmental body. And at this time, we will adjourn into executive session. All righty, here we are. No action coming out of executive meeting tonight, so we will call our workshop session to order. Go to item number 2, discussion regarding FY 2025 budget.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You at your dais, you have the slides will also be displayed on the screen. We appreciate your patience in waiting for this. I know we plan to kind of roll some of this out. Last meeting, we're unable to. We want to be efficient in this presentation because it's a little bit tedious, and but at the same time provide you the opportunity to ask questions and provide direction. We do have a lot to cover tonight. We want to talk a little bit about the budget status, where we are, how we got here. We'll talk a little bit about how the budget, our operating budget, each city does their budgets a little bit differently. We take a look at just the operating portion of the budget with at the same time recognizing some of the resources we have in other funds that are not normally budgeted. Take a look at some capital projects, funding sources, organization funding, and also EMS consideration, which I think I referenced in one of my previous report memos to you. I think the other thing that I had talked to council or referenced to council a number of times leading up to this budget cycle is the need to take kind of a deep dive into water and wastewater costs and rates. We have been working diligently as a staff team on health insurance renewal options. We don't believe that this is the appropriate time to talk about compensation. We feel like we've got to get a foundation put together and direction from council before we take that piece up, perhaps in the next meeting or two. Talk about upcoming dates and council input and direction. I think what I'll say is we are in a good place. I think you've heard me say that the last thing we want to do as a staff is bring you a problem to deal with first. We want to make sure that we scrub the numbers, we take a look at every line item, we try to identify those areas that we may have concern or needs or need to address, as in the water and wastewater departments. But we certainly, our goal is to bring you a good starting point. We don't think this is something that is done by any means. We're waiting for your input and direction on it, but we do feel like we are at a good point. Our projected year-end and initial FY 24-25 budget are balanced with slight surpluses. We have given a little more attention to the FY 25 budget numbers than we have to the projected year-end. We got to a point on projected year-end where we knew we were going to have some sort of a surplus, and we kind of quit messing with those numbers, and we really concentrated mostly on the FY 25 budget numbers. We do want to get your input, particularly on capital items. We think we have a lot of projects that are in the queue, as well as a lot of funding sources for those without necessarily impacting the operating budget a great deal. We will have an aggressive capital program using operating ARPA grant funds and certificate of obligation funds. Currently, our personnel costs are budgeted flat. They do include some of the FTEs the council has approved through FY24. For example, fire department, some reorganization there. Previous levels of organization funding has been included, and we will typically, we package these numbers up, ready to go for you to look at this evening, and then we make modifications based on council directed by a budget memo where we take a look at the changes we make to the budget and then the impact on the bottom line. This represents all of our operating funds, and I'll go through what we mean by operating funds, but you can see, at least in this go-round, your last column, FY25 proposed, we're sitting at $34,100,000 in income and about $33,800 in expenses for a surplus of about $290,000. And I'll go over a couple of things that I think will improve that bottom line as we discuss, particularly about health insurance costs. Projected year end currently is figured at about $1.2 million. We think those numbers are probably a little more likely to change, but certainly we're not going to come back to you and say our projected year end is a deficit. It's still going to be, I think, very positive, but we might have more fluctuation in that number, and we feel a little more solid about the FY25 proposed. In terms of budget organization, again, every city budgets still a little bit differently, but what we like to concentrate on are our bread and butter funds, what it takes to provide public safety, what it takes to keep the water on, the lights on, to run an airport and golf course, pick up trash, that sort of thing. All our general fund, which is the primary services fund for the city. The various departments, I believe we have about 14 different departments. Some of these are a little combined, we don't include all of them, but IT, admin, planning and building, cemetery, library, parks, etc., public safety, utility billing and collection. The proprietary or enterprise funds are those funds that are typically run more or considered separately from your basic services. They're more run like a business or proprietary fund. Electric, water, all your utilities, and it also includes airport, golf, and animal shelter. There are a number of funds that we still use to fund projects. The council will approve, for example, an expenditure out of Fund 40, which is hotel occupancy tax. But that's typically always brought to council and generally funds capital improvements from those applicable funds, and those include also some CO funds. If we break down the departmental budget or the fund budgets, these are the funds that make up the budget that you just saw before we roll up. General fund, about a $13 million budget. Water, wastewater, that includes collection, distribution, wastewater collection, water distribution, plant, etc. You can see that's currently at about an $81,000 deficit. And again, we will, besides the numbers and transfer to get to a balanced budget, typically in all funds. Electric, about a $580,000 surplus currently. Aviation, animal shelter, and golf course have all been, we've applied transfer funds to those funds so that they are actually at a balanced budget at this point. Again, about $290,000 surplus in FY25 proposed and 1.2 in projected year end. Just a couple of budget notes. The revenue from property and sales tax, and I think council's aware of this, but it's a relatively small portion. We just want to point out that sales tax is very important to us. Property tax is very important to us, but in the grand scheme of things, it takes up about 12% of the city's revenue budget. Utility revenues account for a little bit less than 60% of the city's revenue budget, and that's inclusive of everything in the electric department, everything in the water, wastewater department, in terms of revenue. Debt service, that's in Fund 11. We typically don't budget, but that is a fund that we transfer money into, as well as INS from your property taxes. A portion of that will go into Fund 11 to pay debt. Salaries and benefits are approximately 32.2% of the city's expense budget. And I think if we were looking back 5 or 6 years ago, that's probably more like 25%, 26%. So that number has, that percentage has creeped up a little bit. How we've gotten here is basically we've been relatively conservative on revenue side. We did push up some expectations in water and wastewater, and we'll spend probably 5 or 6 slides just going into some detail on that. We're not assuming any consideration on rates for water and wastewater, but we did push up the expectations maybe slightly in water and wastewater. Almost all of it, we do have, I believe, about $1.1 million in capital expense, 1.142, but we're funding a lot of capital projects out of non-operating funds. We'll go over that a little bit as well. Our street paving is consistent, as well as we've actually made 98 separate line item modifications to departmental submissions. And I think I also want to mention that staff has been very good about the budget process. I think they're bought in. I think they understand how important it is for us to be responsible and present you a balanced budget. And they have certainly risen to the occasion. I want to talk just a little bit about capital projects that are funded from other funds. And we do have some fairly robust funds, the American Rescue Plan Act, and we'll go over fund balances there. And actually some of these have already been done. Business park portion of that $971,000 is also part of Jason Jones' upper pressure plane, where we wanted to, so there's a dual benefit from that expenditure. Looping projects, water relocation on 281 South, that's complete. Emergency generation we're still working on, but those are capital projects funded from the American Rescue Plan Act fund. CDBG and federal congressional funding, we'll talk a little bit about that later, but we also will leverage some federal funds for wastewater plant, and primarily in the solids handling or belt press, and then also drainage on Cemetery Creek. We were notified last week that we should get an announcement from the state in February for a CDBG award for drainage improvements in the Cemetery Creek area. Ryan has been working with engineering consultants on drainage, in the northwest part of town, and trying to improve a number of those drainages. Fund 40, hotel occupancy tax, partially from Hostess House wayfinding. It is identified source, and Becky will go over that. And then Fund 65 is just a 2022 CO issue, those projects. So the message here is that even though we may not have a lot of funds budgeted from operating funds, we have a lot of other sources whereby to fund these capital programs. We do have, and I think one of the biggest parts of council's input is going to be, what else do we need to fund? Are there other projects? We heard about another project this morning from a council member for a splash pad. These things we want to be able to make sure they're on the table, not necessarily to do them all, so that council as a whole can consider them and provide direction to staff. But a couple of things that we want to remind folks of, particularly from the CIP report, was the projects that they emphasized. One was the Water Master Plan project, which included kind of the next project on that list was improvement to our delivery points, mixing for the ejection sites, and larger vaults, both 580 and 190 delivery points of delivery. The other item was comprehensive look at the city senior center, Head Start facility on East 8th Street, as well as the expansion of parks and park uses, including trails, parking, Turner Field lighting. And if we start looking at using a lot of space for certain activities, we need to also make sure that we're planning for where people park and how they get there, and do we have safety and lighting and pavement and hardscaping in place. So those were some of the things. This is not an all-inclusive list. I fully expect council to say, let's spend more on this particular area or on different utilities. So to give you just brief outline of some of the other non-operating funds that we have with Fund 22 Economic Development. That's basically has been used as a clearinghouse. Money has been transferred into that fund, typically from a utility, electric, and/or LEDC will transfer money in there to help support the economic development position. City matches that, and so that's been used to fund economic development projects, but to also, that's where we pay our economic development out of. 11, the debt service, court security fund, hotel occupancy tax. The uses are restricted by state statute. We've got a Key Avenue fund. I don't even think we have $100 left in that, do we? So some of these are, again, Key Avenue was just finishing up when I got here, and that fund, we probably need to go ahead and clear that out. Other CO issues, 63, 65, and 68. 65 is the fund that's most recent and certainly the healthiest at this point. To give you just a quick look at fund balances, and I think we also want to send a message that this is, you've got some healthy fund balances, and certainly they're available for council use, depending on what projects you'd like to look at. General fund about a 4.3. Hotel occupancy is currently a $1 million fund balance, but we have overspent receipts in the hotel occupancy tax fund for the last couple of years, and now it's starting to catch back up, and it's recovering really pretty quickly. CARES Act, that's what we termed as ARPA, $812,000. Key Avenue, again, $103. I don't know why I even put that on there. And some leftover funds from 68, about $79,000. Your electric fund is healthy, $8.3 million in fund balance. Water, wastewater, a little less than $1 million, and then the CO funds, the 22 CO fund is about 6.7. And I think I just want to make one comment on the electric fund balance. The mayor asked me, I think when, probably before you took the seat as mayor, after we had just gone through Winter Storm Uri, and he says, can we buy any insurance, to help insulate us from any exposure we have for Winter Storm Uri? And the answer is yes, you can buy insurance. It's expensive, and I still think council's position and decisions they made was very sound. The best insurance you can have is a healthy fund balance. And so I think that's, we want to maintain that directive from council and make sure, particularly now, things are still a little upside down in the electric market, and I think it's very important for the city to maintain a reasonable fund balance in the electric fund. I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about water and wastewater. And I think it's something that certainly I've suggested we dig into a little bit. We're taking a look at the trends. I think we need to take a look at the rates due to costs of procuring wholesale water. And that's everything from operating and maintenance expense to emergency water, which we've been under contract with an emergency water for, close to a year now. Reservation costs, so all of our Brazos River Authority costs. Debt from taking on a little bit more debt in 2022 Two, and I think there's some other things that I think, keep in mind, you know, the more gallons of water we sell, that's more ability to spread costs, right? So if you sell 1 million gallons and you can spread those costs over 1 million gallons, it's a lot better off for everybody than if you only sell 500,000 gallons. So, and I think through conservation, through drought that we've been through, and I think through the mindset, I think the mindset in terms of landscaping has changed a little bit. And it's not just, I want to xeriscape my yard, it's just, it's not as important to me to make sure my grass is green. So there's some of that is keeping maybe the previous use of water down a little bit. It's just, like I said, I think it's part conservation and part it's not as important to residents. I may be off base with that comment, but let's see. Also, our own costs of retail distribution have gone up, and we'll take a look at some of that. I think we also need to take a look at rates based on capital needs that have been identified through 2 preliminary engineering reports, as well as one that's on the way for supplemental water. When we try to take a look at costs or do a cost study, the idea is to come up with a per unit cost. What does it cost per square foot of a house or per 1,000 gallons of water? So anything that we've done or that I've tried to do here is based on what impact is that increase on 1,000 gallons of water, because that's what we bill people. Everybody gets billed a readiness to serve charge and then cost per 1,000 gallons of water. So when we take a look at it uses, again, fairly flat. This also is a good visual on why we do sewer averaging over the winter months. That's when your lowest water usage is. But you can see that we've had a slight increase. Our usage is typically between 1 million gallons a day and 2.5 million gallons a day. We peaked out some days a little bit higher, but in terms of monthly uses, fairly consistent. You can see the peaks and valleys, and somewhat increased in use. Although there are some anomalies. When we had the big water main break in Kempner, we're also obligated for a portion of that water loss by contract. So when stuff like that happens, it does spike the water use up. The things that we looked at when we talked about, what's going on, what is that cost per 1,000 gallons of water. These are the accounts we looked at. One is on the revenue side, taking a look at what are we doing for water sales. And by the way, everything that's FY24, that's only 3/4 of the year. But I still wanted to put that in there just to make sure there was some relevance in including FY24, even though it's just 3/4 of the year. But what's going on our water sales, for example, we see a little uptick in FY22, and that'll correspond to some rate increases we took up in 22-23. Wastewater fees, just as flat as they can be, pretty much. The other thing that I wanted to make sure we were transparent about is what we were collecting in terms of surcharges on an industrial contract that we had. And really, through 3/4 of 24, we brought in nearly 300,000 in surcharges. That's what it costs to treat this water too. So this is not free money. We're charging a customer for what it's costing us to treat this water. So about 170,000 in FY23. The expenses that we looked at, and one thing that's not on here is debt, but the cost of water account, that is the dollars that we pay Kempner Water Supply Corporation for delivering to us Central Texas water. It includes Central Texas O&M, Kempner O&M, electric costs, chemicals, contribution to Central Texas Capital, tank maintenance. Or a number of that contract is fairly inclusive in terms of the charges that we pay a portion of contractually. And that's what it cost us in FY20 through 24 so far to buy water on that contract. Our water rights represents the cost of the Brazos River Authority rights to our water in Stillhouse Hollow. And then we'll talk a little bit about that. But those are the numbers that I started with in terms of trying to get to what's happening with our per 1,000 gallon rate. The wholesale water, this is a bill from Kempner. And you can see probably up until early to mid 21, our cost of water is a little bit less than a little bit less than $1 a thousand. Pretty cheap water. And then as we get into 21, 22, that trend line continues to go up. So the trend line, if you were to look at that, it's pretty easy to see that what we were paying in October 19 has trended up about $1 a thousand gallons. We have some peaks in there. So, for example, we have a busted main, and we have an anomaly. We have to pay our portion of Georgetown tank maintenance, $18,000 a month for 10 months. So there are a few anomalies like that, but we're always going to have anomalies along the way in water. So just that one line item, you can see we went from 2.9 million in 2020, FY 2020 to about 3.1 in FY 23. Talk a little bit about the Brazos River Authority and Council, and I think there are a few of you that were not on the board when we went through that renewal, but we had a 1980 contract with Brazos River Authority for 3,000 acre-feet of water. That renewed in August of 2021, and guess what? We didn't get the 1980 rating. It went up substantially. And you can see, and again, I apologize about including FY24 because we're not done paying this fiscal year yet. But you can see that in FY20 we were paying, the cost of that water was about 43 cents a thousand gallons. And FY23 we're up to 86 cents. We're thinking that's about 40 cents more per thousand gallons than what we were paying 3 or 4 years ago. And at that time, one of the things we did is we went to council and said, do you still want to keep all this water? And of course, it's only there if it's there, right? But the reservation of that water, and at that time, council says, absolutely, the one thing we cannot, it's worth it to us to have that extra 1,500 acre-feet more than we use, or 1,000 acre-feet more than we use. So I think that's a good and responsible decision by council. Increases in debt load to water and wastewater fund. Our debt load basically was in the low 600,000s in FY 2020, peaked up to about $1 million once we issued the 2022 COs. So that CO was heavily laden in water and wastewater projects. It had plant upgrades, we had looping projects, etc. So that did kick that up a fair amount. And you can see the graph on the left. The blue bar is what our annual debt is, and then when we annualize the cost per 1,000 gallons, and we use the actual gallons that were delivered to us in each of those years, whether we used them or, as I'll show you, whether we flushed them on the ground. So that cost, we went from basically a little less than $1.30 per 1,000 gallons for the debt to up to about $1.90, $1.95. I think FY24 will have some slight correction as we sell more gallons of water and can spread those costs over those gallons. But that's, you're looking at about a 60 cent per 1,000 gallon cost that has increased. This doesn't have anything to do, I was kind of wondering too about how much water we were flushing, what that water was costing. We're flushing anywhere from, less than 1 million gallons per month, and sometimes up to 10 million gallons a month, and those are primarily for water quality issues. We may have had a main break, and so we've got to push all that bad water out of our system to make sure when that chlorine starts hitting our system that we we can push that good water into our system quicker by flushing. So what I did was I took the cost of our provided water by the gallons that we flushed, and since October of 19, the cost to put water on the ground has been about $235,000. And think, oh, well, okay, maybe over 5 years, maybe that's not as bad. It's still water going on the ground that we're paying for. The other thing that I wanted to include in this discussion was the fact that we do have some long-term plans, and that I think council was very prudent in commissioning these studies. The pre-treatment and main water treatment plant preliminary engineering report in February 21. There were about $12 million worth of improvements on that. We had a relatively small share of that, about $3 million. But that is something that we continue to work on, and this, with the influx of the $1 million federal funds, we're probably going to kick off the solids handling portion of that. We need that for the plant anyway. The upper pressure plane water system improvements. This is what I refer to quite frequently as the water master plan, because that's what Jason just doesn't know when to stop. And the second phase, we've kind of gone through the first phase. The second phase of that is improvements to the delivery points and mixing for the injection sites. And that in 2022 was estimated about $712,000. We anticipate that being closer to $900,000 to $1 million if we were to go out to do that. That's on your list to think about. And then, of course, the other report that we have not yet received is the supplemental water source investigation that's currently being conducted. Taking a look at options for additional capacity and supplemental water sources, treatment options, and as well as the assessment of current conditions. So the picture I'm painting is your cost of water has gone up. You've also got a plan for the future. Those projects that help us with capacity and redundancy and reliability also have costs involved with them. And so those are items that we'll have to keep in mind, particularly as we look at budgeting. Council's been very sensitive about rates, as you should be. You don't want to charge folks more than what it costs to provide that service. When we take a look at the history of rate increases, I have no hesitation that council's been very thoughtful. I'm saying council's been very thoughtful about rates and the impacts of rates to our customers. But just in terms of water rates over the last, I guess that's 9 years, you've gone up about $5.80 on what we call the readiness to serve charge. That's your base rate. And you've gone up on your cost per 1,000 gallons in 9 years, 25 cents. Wastewater you've had 2 rate increases since October 1 of 2015. One was an increase in your readiness to serve of about $1.30. That's just your base charge every time. The cost to have somebody read your meter and to have those crews available, etc. And then your cost per 1,000 gallons of wastewater, which is figured based on your water usage in the winter months, as an average, has gone up a nickel per 1,000 gallons on the wastewater side. So why do we spend so much time talking about water and wastewater? We've got some costs here that probably need to be addressed, and we certainly want to visit with council about that and see what is the most reasonable and best way forward. We did talk about this in the last couple of years, and we took a bite out of it October 1 of 22 as well as July 1 of 23, and it did make a difference. I mean, we did collect more revenue in those years for water. However, it doesn't make up for the $2 per 1,000 that we're seeing in terms of increase. It doesn't hit the mark. And of course, wastewater. Big deal about wastewater is you got a big plant you got to take care of. And we've continually made improvements to whether it's been the ozone disinfection or motor control centers. We upgraded motors on the clarifiers in 2014, 2015, but it's just an animal that needs to be fed, right? You got to keep that stuff up. Any comments on that, other than probably something we need to have a discussion about? I'm going to shift gears, talk a little bit about organization funding. We have funded, that's included in the FY proposed 25 at historic levels for WCID, Architects Defense Alliance, Hill Country 100, etc. Organizations that are not currently funded that have made a request: Cooper Spring Nature Park, and those folks, if anybody went on a walking tour a few weeks ago, they're doing some great work out there for the city, and they're looking at being able to supplement some of their project costs by as much as 10 grand. Lampasas County Museum, I have not heard from them specifically. I don't know if Becky, you have heard from them, but. And then probably the big one is what's going on with Hamilton County EMS. They were brought in through the county, and by all comments, they have done a very good job of delivering service. There's no question about that. But they have run a deficit this first year, and originally came back to the county and said we need about $250,000 for us to be viable. I think their losses were $180,000, and they were looking at, you know, whatever that deficit was plus 10%, I believe, is what the gentleman from Hamilton said. They've gotten that down to $200,000, and the question is, with the percentage of calls coming from the city of Lampasas, is there an opportunity for funding partnership? I think that's a peer-to-peer conversation. I don't want to be in the middle of translating. But I think probably I would suggest some discussion with the county judge and commissioners on a peer-to-peer basis. I don't mind doing that, but I'm not their peer. You guys are. But that is something I think has been important. They've done a good job, and certainly is worthy of a conversation. Talk a little bit about employee costs, and this has been a whirlwind last couple of days on health insurance. Compensation, like I said, that's something that we leave for another night, but certainly we want, if you do have any thoughts, we're very interested in those. Health insurance, we had embedded based on loss ratio, including May of 23, of 20% an increase. So we went ahead and put that number in because we felt like that was a good marker, not as shocking if we already embed it. Initial quotes came in at 19.1% increase. That was on our current plans. Through broker negotiation, those rates were brought down to 11.72%, which we felt like was not unreasonable. It did have some changes in plan, particularly for the step-up option, including an increase in ER visits, an increase of imaging, hospital stays. I think there's some prescription increases. Through Yvonne and Vicki, and they'll talk to you a little bit more about this on the regular agenda, but and again, this was all done. I wasn't going to redo this. I just figured I'd leave it in Yvonne's lap to explain to you. But looks like they're going to be coming in at a 12.4 and returning all those changes in our plan back to what we originally had. It does maintain step-up option. Our dental increase was quoted at 6%, but 6% on dental is only $1.50 a month, so we felt that was not unreasonable. We also, our broker did compare market options for the city, but not typically, but every one of them had a decreased level of benefits at a higher cost than we were paying now. Cigna Aetna declined a bid based on cost. Blue Cross had a higher max out of pocket, and they were 24% higher than our current rate. United, higher employee costs, but they were at 22.6% higher than the current rate. Curative had a completely different model whereby they would providing you a payback of a certain percentage of premium if you got below a certain loss ratio. If your loss ratio was 80%, they would return some percentage back to you, but it was a much higher, it was more like a catastrophic deal, and it came at 14% higher than our current rate. And I think what Yvonne and Vicki will tell you this evening is that I think at 12.4%, we feel like that's, we would encourage council to consider that affirmatively. I know I talked to you quite a bit. August 5th, I wanted to gauge council's interest in a budget meeting on August 5th. We could do departmental presentations at that time. We do have an extra Monday in between our meetings. August 12th, again, with workshop at August 26th. The target for council is to have our first reading of our budget ordinance and approval of the tax rate September 9. And we want to be available and meet as frequently or discuss whatever specifically you would like to talk about as many times as we need to between now and then. Like I said, I think we've got a good starting point, but it is just that, it's a starting point. We need council's input as we modify the budget and figure out what we need to fund and what else we can do. I know that there are some questions regarding staffing and different ideas that council may have on that. The last thing that I just want to make sure, the message in this is that we're in a good position to meet the needs of our citizens. We do have adequate non-operating funds available to meet aggressive capital project plans for FY25. Our fund balances are healthy and exceed accepted requirements, and they are available for use for council priorities. Water costs have increased approximately $2 per 1,000 gallons over the last 4 years. And we think that that's probably worthy of a discussion with council in terms of, how is that reflected in our rates. And just because I'm kind of a nerd about it, we flushed about $235,000 worth of water over the last 5 years. So that I kind of bulleted this at you, and I apologize if I run through it too quickly, but certainly I'm interested in any comment you have, any suggestion, directive. If you like August 5th, any questions you have?
Any comments or questions?
Are we still paying that emergency water agreement? Are we still paying monthly on that?
Yes, we are. It varies. Like I think the last month, it wasn't this month, but the month before, we had it was a fairly small amount. It was 4 or 5 million gallons on that, based on it. And I think the follow-up question to that is, is it an emergency or is it mismanagement? Why aren't we getting water? And is there possible damages because they're not providing us that water? That water costs us right now $2.11, and in our whole, you can see every time that spike goes over $2, that's what we're paying for basically for that emergency water. So, but yes, we are still doing that, although it seems to be not as bad. Although I read in the paper, I got an email today that Central Texas did have a water main break in around the Shanklin pump station. So, they may be trying to feed their system off of the Lake Cliff plant, and how much can they really deliver to West Bell, Dog Ridge, and Kimberly, Lampasas. So, yes, we are still paying with that to answer your question.
So I guess it's Central Texas that's not providing water to get that propane.
Correct. And a lot of this was done, this was all predicated off of what happened in October when we had that big rise on the river, knocked their pumps out. And that was arguably a true force majeure event. The question now is, October, 9 months later, 7 months later, why aren't they able to deliver us the water we need? Some of that, too, and I don't want to get in the weeds on this, some of that too, but there was concern from Kempner that the water quality was not good, and so they shut them off. When in fact, I don't think the water quality was worse than what Kempner was pushing through their line. So I think what you're getting at, and I think what I'd like to answer is, we have to stay on top of both Kempner and Central Texas, because we don't want either of them to manipulate their obligations in the contract, by pointing fingers or cutting water off or not doing what they need to do to keep their plant running as well as it should be. That's a long way around your question, but
You answered it, so what do we do next to make sure that either one of us not taking advantage of us?
Staff has been in discussion with council on this and have prepared a bullet list of items that we want to communicate to both entities. I don't want to say damages is on the table, but it's something that certainly has been part of the conversation.
And that emergency water agreement we have with Kemper, when does that expire?
I believe, I think I said it after, the date was after summer, because we felt like if we were going to have an issue, it might be over the summer with low water levels, et cetera. And so I think it was an October term. October was the termination of that.
And then we'll renegotiate that, or?
Correct. And certainly, Councilman Hernandez, the last thing we want to do is be sitting here telling everybody we don't have any water coming into town too. So you have to balance making sure our residents have water, but at the same time not being taken advantage of. Hidden budget fund, it's the best.
Thank you. Good report. Discussion regarding the bid for the Second Street roadway improvement project. Report.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. It's a hard act to follow always. The Second Street roadway improvement project is one that has gone out for bid. I know staff's been keeping council updated on kind of the progress as it made it through design, the needs, but if you'll give me just a second, I'd like to just briefly go back over that again. The project itself begins at Main on 2nd Street, ends at Pecan. The project in and of itself contains ADA amenities, so we're doing some things. There's some drainage concerns as far as old failing structure on the north side of 2nd, which is, when we looked at this, we decided to take the next step, reconstruct the road, rebuild the road. But those amenities, sidewalks, new curb and gutter, and actual redesign of the roadway. So the engineer, to adjust the actual profile or the vertical grade of the road, spent time and has made some adjustments for drainage to make that a better scenario. And in that, working through those things, we also noted, and it's a project that was called out on the manager's report, is the looping project as well. So water line, 6-inch water line connecting from 2nd Street there on Live Oak, going down Live Oak to North Street. So we included that in the bid process. The bid process, that was an ad alternate bid, which was bid together. We can accept either or both. But I think looking at the numbers, I felt pretty confident. We had 5 bidders. The engineer's cost estimate was right at $1 million for this type of project. The low bidder, which was JHL, came in total at $831,000 approximately. And the way that we looked at the funding for this, we had some CARES money or the federal ARPA money to help that's dedicated for water projects, infrastructure projects. So what we were proposing was to use $178,257.55 out of our CARES Act money, out of that account, to pay for the water line looping piece. It'll all be done as one project, but $653,451.64 would come from our Streets Capital Outlay Fund, that would fund the majority of the project. To give you a little bit of background, JHL Construction's out of Gatesville. As I mentioned, we had 5 bidders. The next closest bidder was about 4%, so the bids were close, which was about a $30,000 difference between low bidder, second bidder. The high bidder was about 1.1 million, or about 27% higher, but still kind of in that range. I mean, it was great having that many bidders. I think we, having people compete like that for some of these projects helped bring the cost down a little bit too. So we were excited about that. Let me see if there's anything else. So at this point, the engineer has reviewed all the bids. They're in your packet for you to look at, as well as his letter of recommendation. He did reached out, I believe, to Colleen, maybe reached out to a few other entities that JHL Construction has worked for, and so staff, as well as the engineer, feels confident that this construction company can do the project. Stand for any questions.
How much of that did we have in our budget for this year?
It's a great question. This year we actually started off, I'll look back at that account, we had $450,000 our streets capital outlay. The CARES Act monies, I actually just sent that in, certified back to the government on what we spent thus far. We had approximately $2 million is what we started with, and we've spent $1.2 million approximately on that. So there's money there for the 178 for the water looping project. Again, we're close to the end of the year, and that's what we were looking at, trying to bid this project out close to the end of our fiscal year, because we knew, knowing what the dollar amount could be, $1 million, how do we fund this? If we can span 2 years to do that, working with Yvonne and of course the city manager, kind of talking through those things. The money that would be left in that capital outlay account would obviously go back into the general fund, but then it could be reallocated, budgeted as we go into the next fiscal year to accommodate that. So we wouldn't use that, those monies that are in the capital outlay this year.
Right, can you explain the possible increase in 551-5545, depending on the timing of the project initiation?
Sure. So if we work through the process of, we still need to review, if council approves the bid, we'll still need to review their performance bond, some other items, and then the engineer will work through that to give them a notice to proceed. But it would be hard pressed for those guys to actually be on site and begin work probably before the end of the year now. There's been a few things, we didn't have a council last time. We were hoping to award it early in the month. But I think, realistically, if they started before the end of the year, what would be allocated, or at least if we were invoiced, you're looking at mobilization costs. So on that one, actual winning bidder, I think their mob cost was in here. Yeah. So $32,000 is their mobilization cost. So we would be obligated, most likely for that, if they get here before the end of the year, to pay out of that capital expense account. If they do any construction, my assumption is they will probably start with the water line first, just because that's the first thing that needs to go in. They can go ahead and cut the pavement, trench the pavement, tear up the pavement to get in there, and make those connections in those tabs. So.
You're talking about the end of the year or the end of the city's fiscal year?
Fiscal year. If there was some chance, I'm not so sure they could start before the end of the fiscal year, but that's what I was referring to. Is if they did and they mobilized and got set up, that would probably be the only cost we would incur before the end of the fiscal year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 4, discussion regarding short-term rentals.
Good evening, Council. So back going through the short-term rentals, so back in June, early part of June, we presented with a letter that we wanted to kind of initiate to get the hotel occupancy tax from the short-term rental owners. At that time, it was a consensus that we wanted to go ahead and move forward with kind of putting together some regulations in lieu of the letter by itself. So I went through and did some more research as far as how many short-term rentals we can identify that are actually inside the city limits. And we have approximately 13 right now today. And then back from 22 to 24, when we first started talking about it, we had about 6. So we have gained some short-term rentals in the area. And as well as we also have a House bill that was presented to be passed, and it kind of reined in what we can and can't do with regarding to municipalities. It didn't pass in September, but we do anticipate going back before and getting it passed to where it does put more regulations on us. So as I go through and do this ordinance, I want to make sure that I'm following kind of those guidelines so we don't have to redo it again and make it harder on those short-term rental homeowners. So one of the things is like a max of $100 registration fee. I'm okay with that, if y'all are okay with that, as far as we're starting it now and implementing that process to where we're aligning with what is already in play going forward. So some other things that I was looking at, and this actual page 14, this is what I brought to y'all before, and I just kind of highlighted items I've added to it or things that I want to kind of go over tonight. So as far as like the adoption of the new policy, so once we put the regulations in place and we do the ordinance, what do y'all feel is fair as far as to notify those property owners that they need to start registering their short-term rental and to start paying the hotel occupancy tax? I'm thinking a 30 to 45 day window. That'll give me an opportunity to send at least 2 notices, because my intent is, once we move forward, is to put a notice in the paper to let the citizens know it's coming. And then once it's adopted, give them that 30 to 45 day window.
Is that possible? I've seen this done in other cities, whether you say beginning January 1, 2025, this has to happen.
Absolutely, I can do that as well.
I mean, instead of giving them 30 to 45 days for the
Right.
adoption ordinance, we give them plenty of notice, ahead of time.
That's fine too. I'm open. I just want to make sure that these are some things I kind of pointed out that I think we need clarity on before I start putting it together.
What is the enforcement and the penalties for non-compliance look like?
That was another thing I wanted to address, because there are I kind of been doing this little look up down, this is on how governments regulate short-term rentals and getting some ideas on how we can do it to where I don't want it to be real strict and real strained and nobody can keep up with it, but I want it to have some bones to it so we know what the structure is, what we want to do. So as far as like the suspension, so like if they don't pay their taxes, if they don't register their Airbnb, those are things I want to kind of put something in place to where we know what the consequences are if they don't do it.
I'm just kind of curious, how are you gonna know that they don't do it?
Because I'll be sending letters to them and they'll have to come to me to register.
What if they just say, I haven't had any rentals?
Well, it's more to register the fact that they have a short-term
Register.
rental is where I want to start with. And then that's a whole nother of how we enforce it. Because I would really like to do it in-house first and kind of get a feel for how much time it takes me to regulate, get the registration process, monitor, follow up with them, make sure they're following the guidelines, and kind of put a number to that of how many hours is spent. And then we kind of extrapolate that and see what it's going to cost if we find a vendor to be able to do that for us. So I don't really have that answer for you today.
So I guess I'm assuming you or somebody else is gonna be getting on every platform to figure out what properties are short-term rentals, is that what you're planning?
That is our plan right now, yes, because we don't know, and we don't have an idea where to start. Like I said, right now it's roughly, 13 that we have. That's right now we can tell, because most of them are in the county, or most of them don't give you a specific address. So we're really gonna have to, fine tune that some.
So I guess that 13 number, did you get on the app or on a app to see what was available? Is that what?
I did a little bit of both. I went to VRBO, Airbnb, I just Googled Lampasas, short-term rentals. I was just kind of word of mouth, knowing the area,
I guess my point
networking.
is, I just don't understand how we're gonna police this, because if you get on that app and you search my passes for Friday night or Sunday night,
Right,
it's only gonna show you what's available.
correct.
So if it's booked, this is gonna be like a very in-depth study you're gonna have to do to figure out which properties we're actually on, because if stuff is constantly booked, it's not gonna show up. Which is
I agree, I mean, it'll take some work, it's gonna take some practice, I mean.
Gotta start somewhere.
Exactly, I still think it's premature as far as globally what everybody else is doing in other cities and what their bucket list looks like as far as what their short-term rentals are and how they're going and moving forward. But I gotta start somewhere and kind of see what it's like, send out the notices, put the notice in the paper. I mean, I might get a lot of people calling me asking more specific information about it, how do I do it, what happens, and then I might get somebody that doesn't wanna comply and we'll just have to figure that out as we go. So I'm hopeful that it'll all be okay, at least moving forward. But I just had some questions that I kind of wanted to go through and identify how to start the regulatory process and adopt an ordinance.
Not necessarily a question for you to answer tonight, but a question that came up in my head, in regards to bedrooms, sleeping areas, life safety. You have on your requirements, like, we have a way to determine that somehow is what I was thinking, and what is it?
And that is,
We're working on it.
well, that is part of it, is like, I wanted to ask, because one thing we can regulate is life and fire safety. We can do parking, we can do noise, those are things that are given, we can do today, tomorrow, whenever. So the only way we can really, I think, figure that out for safety is having the egress plan, having the fire safety, having the evacuation plan, have that all identified with their site plan and what their floor plan looks like with their house. So that is part of the checklist that I want to come up with that's reasonable. Like I said, I don't want to hold anybody a bunch of red tape, but I want to make sure that we know that if there was a problem and there was 12 people in there, we know exactly how to get to them and get them out safely.
Have you been able to speak with other cities in regard to their municipal code and how they regulate it?
I have a file folder full of
Yeah.
information on gathered from other cities.
Yeah, I went on there this afternoon, just looking at the municipal codes and they're.
All over the
As long
place.
as it- this-
Yes, they're all over the place, and they all do things different. I mean, there's no two that I've found that are alike.
I should know with a, if you got a home that maybe it's a short-term rental for a while, and it goes back to a regular rental or traditional rental house or a single-family home. We gonna look at the fire and life safety and egress and ingress. Can the government go in there and try to regulate that?
For the short-term rentals, or for just their home?
Well, I mean,
When you're
this is
building,
my question is, if someone switched from having a short-term rental, let's say 6 months or something, and say, heck with this, we're gonna put it on the market, we're gonna put another family member in there or something like that. Is that a little bit broad for the government coming in?
I mean, it's, like I said, it's like what other cities are doing. I don't do it for a home other than when they're building a home, we can verify their egress and their ingress because of their size of their windows, size of the doors, making sure they have all that. So that's done up front. But when you have more than the expected, you have more than 2 or 3 or 4 people that live there, and then you're opening it up for, business if you would, and you're having people in and out of there, you wanna make sure you have a safety plan and a list of contacts and point of contact for people you need to contact for that home. And like I said, I'm just going along with what other cities are doing and not make it as strict. I don't want it to make something we cannot enforce, but I do wanna make sure that we are being responsible and making sure that they're not parking in someone else's parking spot that lives there next door, or they're not, having too many parties late at night, or noise ordinance, or, we be able to get to them safely in case there was something that happened, a common fire. So, and that's just a simple floor plan of, this is how I'm gonna exit, this is how I'm gonna get into them, and there's 3 bedrooms in there, and just something simple, and that's what most have done.
Would that fall under the code enforcement or fire marshal?
It could at that point, yes, definitely. I mean, this will be all encompassed. I mean, building official, code enforcement, everybody will get involved in creating this as something that we can tangibly hold on to and enforce.
And I think if there's a change in occupancy, I feel as a homeowner, that would be my responsibility to be like, hey, I rented this out, you need to see a copy of my long-term rental now.
And they just wouldn't register for the next year.
Yeah, and then one of the other things that came up, the short-term rental, less than 30 days. I would think that would need to be primarily because you could get a winter tax, for example, that's there for 60 days. Is it then still considered a short-term rental at that point?
Exact point, we'll go.
Or
slow season, people are gonna be going back and forth between SDR and long term.
I mean, are you
I
gonna,
mean, these are all great
Yeah.
questions and they're all great what ifs, but I'm just trying to get something in writing so we can have some kind of checklist, some kind of regulations that we want to enforce.
that's what we're talking
And
about.
I'm just trying to, there's gonna be a lot of unknowns that we'll find out as we go.
I'm curious about the location and zoning districts. I mean, I know House Bill 2665 didn't pass, but it's expected to pass. I mean, I'm pretty sure it states in there that we can't adopt a law that prohibits property
Prohibits,
from
right.
being short-term rentals.
Absolutely, we have to allow them to in the location.
So,
And
go ahead.
part of that was on there from before, that was what we talked about, like if we want to have a specific zoning in town where residential, commercial, or the business district where we have it, this is zoned for short-term rentals, and that was part of the initial talking points. But now it's the short-term rental overlay, so like the city of Vernon is a great example. They go through the planning and zoning commission and have them do a short-term rental overlay for that property, and they send out notices to their property owners. I don't wanna go that route, but that is an alternative. But I don't want to designate a certain area that's only able to have short-term rentals in a specific area unless it becomes a market issue, unless we're having, a problem with, rooftops, and that may be something we need to revisit, but we can't prohibit it. We can't stop it from happening, but I just don't know what our boundaries will be as we start getting involved in this, because we don't want a whole entire block being nothing but short-term rentals, and that could happen. But at the same time, I mean, we can't really stop it, and as long as we're doing our due diligence, making sure it's safe, making sure the community is aware, and we're making sure that they have a little checklist that we've done our P's and Q's, that's all we can do.
All right,
I mean, I'm not arguing with you on
Oh, yeah.
this, but I do think we do need to get ahead of this and probably have some kind of ordinance
And that's what I'm working on.
for short-term rentals, but I don't feel like we need to try to regulate it. I think that's gonna be a headache for everybody.
To kind of do what with them, I'm sorry?
To regulate it, to have people registering and following up with it and that kind of stuff.
So, I mean, what would you tell that the ordinance would be, and if we do something to encourage the short-term rentals or allow the short-term rentals, then that's it, we just allow it and don't do any registration process, or?
I don't know.
I think that you're gonna need some kind of registration process, because if you're having to collect taxes, you need to know who's paying the taxes. And they need some kind of accounting type thing for a bond, and we all would use for that.
Well, we don't have to have a regulation for that, we can just send them a letter like I wanted to do back in June. I can send a letter to them and say, it has been known that you own property in a short-term rental and you are obligated by this code and then all this stuff that they have to pay their hotel occupancy tax.
That's not what I was getting at, is I think that needs to be in all of our law.
does the county have anything in place now, or they work on it?
I haven't talked to them, I'm not sure, I
No,
haven't heard
no,
anything.
no. No.
But our ordinance, that would be a little bit different than the county ordinance, is that correct?
Yes, it'd be completely separate, it would just be for the city of Lampasas.
This ordinance that's covered it.
That's kind of where I was going, the next part, just really quickly, just to get some more feedback. Like I said, the things I wanted to focus on is gonna be like the noise ordinance, so we can regulate the parking requirements, so they're not taking over the parking of their neighbor, just to be courteous and let them know that they should stay within their own boundaries.
We have some of those in place already, don't we, City? I mean, we have the place.
Correct, that's what we refer back to, is stating that these are in place, yes. And then, like I said, just flexibility with it to know that it's gonna evolve, because as the short-term rental changes, we're gonna have to change with it and kind of make some, adaptations and changes as we go and modify the ordinance, whatever we create.
Last question.
Yes.
And I'm going back to House Bill 2665. I know it hasn't passed.
Correct.
In there, it says that the term short-term rental does not include a bed and breakfast. How do we differentiate between what we're calling a short-term rental and what people call a bed and breakfast?
Well, because the bed and breakfast, typically, you're gonna have your owner stays on the there at the location. They live there and they're opening up their home.
Typically, but it's not required.
Well, that's how it's defined in our zoning, is a bed and breakfast is the owner stays on site and they provide that service to their customers. They can only have X number of rooms taken up for the bed and breakfast. So a short-term rental, the owner does not have to be there. So that's how we have to define it and make sure they're very clear on how we define it and making sure that it makes sense and everybody can abide by it so that we're following the differences. Because a lot of people could use a guest house or an apartment or numerous things in a short-term rental. So we're just going to be real careful in our language and what we want to encompass in that ordinance.
Well, guest house could be like a bed and breakfast because the owners are on the property.
If that's your name. I don't. I just kind of want to get feedback. So like I said, I'll draft something together and get y'all's opinion on it next time, and kind of do some more research. But like I said, I want it to be very fluid. I want it to be very easy to follow, but I want something in place as requested. And then as we move forward, we'll just modify as we need to.
Just get that foundation down, so we can all get coffee and we can kind of go through and get our own notes on there.
Absolutely.
Organize it.
I will be happy to do that.
Appreciate it.
All right, we'll move on to number 5, discussion regarding wayfinding sign project bids.
So, kind of hard where to start, but, so I guess we'll start with the whole, when I came to y'all and I gave y'all the phase ideas and then told you the estimated cost from Studio 1619 was roughly gonna be about $197, was gonna be the all-in for the entire process. If we break it down into phases, they're looking at a little less than 90 per phase. So, when we got the bid back, we were pretty shocked, to say the least, of how the bids came in. As you look across the board between the two, even if you looked at, pick a page, it doesn't really matter which page you look at, but when you look at 1920 and then kind of compare and look at the difference, whether they were in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or just the actual overall cost of a wayfinding or an actual gateway sign or the secondary signs, their costs were very different across the board. So we met on Friday with the firm and kind of went through and kind of talked about what they're seeing, what they found out, why could they be so different. And a lot of it, when they were kind of going through it, a lot of it was either the distance to install, the number of sites, the material cost, the cost to haul the material, the mobilization, having to put up their tech, their staff, their whoever was coming with them that day, their worker, to put them up in lodging for a few days. Some of them were estimating just a demo and the concrete being like a 6 weeks project. So I was just I was floored. And we only got 2 bids, and we sent out the Studio 1619, they sent out 10 letters to places they've done business with before, and we only got 2. So, kind of looking through, our project had 2 gateway signs, 3 secondary gateway signs, 21 wayfinding, and then 8 of the TxDOT mass arm signs. When it comes to the mass arm signs, they couldn't find anybody willing to do it. And that's just a simple sign on the TxDOT lights. It just is lit up, it shows the city, our logo, and then it shows the street name. But nobody wanted to bid on it, nobody wanted to give the bidders an estimate. So you have one that bid outrageously amount, and then one that just put in something just to put something in that place. So it's kind of interesting to just kind of go across the board and getting a feel for what they wanted to do as opposed to this project. So when we went through and we were looking at the differences, you're talking roughly $455,000 to $575,000 for the overall project for this wayfinding sign that we estimated to be about $200,000. So what we want to do is kind of change the scope, because we're thinking the haul of the material is going to be, no matter who we go with, I think it's going to be something that's going to be a hefty cost. So if we do the monument signs locally, or gateway signs, it might help defer some of that cost because they won't have to travel as far. And then if we go back and just do the 21 wayfinding signs as a separate project all by itself, we might be able to get an actual project, or a sign fabricator, they'll actually be able to say, okay, this was gonna cost to do these 21 signs, and then they'll come one day and then place them with us, and maybe helping with some of the demo, some of the concrete work, some of the pre-work, and we can kind of work together and get it done for a more reasonable price. And then the mast arms, while they're beautiful and neat and cool, it's not something we have to do now. We can wait and do that later if we choose to at a different time, and that would save us some costs as well. So when I was looking back through what the estimated costs were, the 21 signs were estimated at $42.50 a piece, which is just the wayfinding signs, so down Key Avenue downtown. It would cost about $89,250, based on the Studio 1619 estimated cost, based on actual projects they've done in the past. So that would just be for those 21 signs, and then we would assist them with the install and the demo of what's currently on the ground today. A primary gateway was estimated at 13. Secondary was 11, 16, and 17 because of the different siding. They were all two-sided, and then the lettering, of course, there was more lettering on the secondary signs. So right now, again, I'm asking for your direction and how you want to handle this, but I prefer to go back and try to do a rescope of the projects. I don't want it to die. I'm very excited about it. I was very disappointed when these bids came in so high. But I think if we change our scope a little bit, I think we'll get more responses and maybe be able to at least get our wayfinding signs done.
Okay, well, can we look at this and see how much we can do in-house? Is that?
Yes, that's what I want to do. I want to try to do what we can. I mean, we can't do everything, of course, but we can definitely demo, take out some time to do some concrete cement, things like that we can probably help do something more in-house than having them come. Because, like I said, that the one contractor said it was going to take them 6 weeks just to do the cement, just to take out, demo, and put the cement for cure, and you're going to be here for 6 weeks, and we have to put them up for 6 weeks. And I'm like, it's okay. we'll think of something different.
One was about $150,000 mobilization.
Yeah. Well, and then we can determine, because the initial was mobilization of 75, and then each of the items below was so inflated, they had to include mobilization in it again, because it just didn't make sense. So, and they're coming, with all fairness, they're coming from Louisville, so I mean, it is a 3-hour trip, but still, I mean, that's a lot of mobilization cost. So I think there's a way we can make it better.
How much of the work do these contractors actually do when they get settled out?
And that was the thing that we found, that some of them might have a GC, and they might have to spread out because they might not have the equipment that we need to provide the signs that we want. So a lot of that could be
Well,
additional
the
needs.
reason I asked that is you talked about that they couldn't find anybody to do
The mast arms.
The mast arms.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, well, you put up signs for a living, you should be able to do that. You shouldn't have to look at something.
Well, and I think it's because it's more of a tech dot regulation is what they have to do and how they have to do it. I think there's a little more red tape they have to go through, and they didn't want to touch it, is what I got from it.
You would think that they would have.
But I did lay at your diet. This is the meeting that I had with Studio 1619 on Thursday, and we kind of went over what they got the feedback from the sign companies that did bid. And so you can reach over this, but I covered this all on my agenda covers. There's nothing really new in this document. I just wanted to have it directly from them this evening.
Yeah, because a lot of the demo and haul off, I mean, the city could do that.
The haul off? Well, it was more of a hauling in, so like the rock and the monument. and
That
stuff.
comes from Congress, it's not 30 miles down the road.
Well, that was one of the things that they said they couldn't find anybody local to do it. So that was the other thing that was like, I know
Maybe
there's
local.
plenty, exactly, plenty around this area that they could provide that.
I agree that it's important.
Correct. So what is y'all's direction to me? How would you like me to proceed? Rescope? Do we want to focus on wayfinding as a separate project and then try to do monuments in locally? Our gateway signs?
You guys good with that? With five signs?
So I think that'll help
I
us.
think that's gonna give us our biggest thing
I agree.
with
I agree completely. And I think we might get more interest if it's just gateway sign, the wayfinding signs specifically. I mean, because they should be able to just make those at their shop and just bring them and we'll help them install, whatever it takes.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Have anything? All right, at this moment, we'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn the workshop.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
And I need to take about a 2 to 3 minute break. I'm sorry. We're thankful, so thankful for the rain that you've given us and the cooler weather. And all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Join me in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to these Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Public hearing, citizens comment, any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter not included on the agenda may do so at this time. The city council may not deliberate on items presented under this agenda item. First name up is Mr. Eddie Bowden. You have 15 seconds.
Hardest thing I've ever done. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Eddie Bowden. I'm coming home furniture here in town, lived here pretty much all my life. I'll try to keep it real brief. I'm just going to wind up reading through my talking point. Instead of talking through them, it'll go better. Main thing I want to come tonight is thank the council for the recent joint meeting y'all put together with EDC and staff this past week, and for allowing and encouraging the open dialogue that y'all did. And I just think that meeting was phenomenal. I think it's fantastic. Y'all talked about maybe continuing to do it on a quarterly basis. I encourage y'all to do that. Y'all will never know how therapeutic that was for several people in this community. And most of you know there's been a group of us trying to meet, and we've been meeting for several months now, about 5 months. We think of ourselves as citizens, men and women, business owners, stockholders, as my dad would have said, movers and shakers of the community, and people that are just concerned. To give you an idea about some of the things we talk about, the anticipated opportunities for growth and commerce that this huge population growth in Texas is happening for over 10 years now. Specifically, we talk about the Texaplex, the Texas Triangle. Most of you are probably familiar with that concept. If you're not, I encourage you to get the book, The Texas Triangle. And I think every civic leader should have a grasp on what's happening. I've got a lot of numbers. I wanted to go over statistics, but I'm not going to bore you with that. I don't have the time. But I do want one specific project within this group. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Cedar View project that's going on in Cedar Park. Broke ground a few months back, 117 acre Warren Buffett project, right behind the HEB Center. I've been familiar with it for a long time because Anchor Store is Nebraska Furniture. And there's going to be a Shield Sporting Goods, the largest sporting goods store in the world. It's about like 10 Bass Pro Shops, has a Ferris wheel inside of it. It's just a convention center hotel, 250 rooms. It's considered a super regional destination center. 30,000 square foot convention center. The reason I bring all this up, what does that have to do with Lampasas? It's the kind of things our group talks about is the anticipated growth that we're fixing to see. And I've got a lot of statistics I wanted to go over, but I'm going to I just want to ask y'all about one other thing. Do any of y'all know about Legacy Ranch High School, what that is? Just found it this past Monday. Prior to that meeting, we had a doctor's appointment in Austin. You know, every time you drive through Seward Junction, you see something new. Huge crane off to the left, this side of Seward Junction, half a mile off 183. It's a high school, the new Liberty Hill High School. They'll have 2 high schools. It's about double the size of the existing high school. It's set up for 4,500 kids originally. They're enrolling this fall. I can't believe it's this far along. They're putting the AstroTurf down on them. It's just blowing my mind how fast this area is growing.
Keep going, Eddie.
Pardon?
Keep going.
Y'all are aware reset my odometer, it's 36 miles from Lampasas. This high school, you can't see it. It's a half mile off 183. It's nearly finished. I didn't even know it was being built. I never drive it. It's in between Ronald Reagan and 183, but just half mile. Anyway, I encourage y'all to, well, you don't need to encourage y'all. Y'all know what's going on. But our group is just the anticipation, and not just the opportunities, but also the obstacles it's going to present for Lampasas, trying to protect our historical buildings and things, but we're blowing up, and y'all know what's going to happen. So that's what our group's all about. Again, thank y'all for putting that meeting together. Our next meeting's on August 2nd. I want to invite all of you. Trying to figure out a way, maybe y'all could help us. We would like to put on a symposium, get some guest speakers, us host it. I need to figure out the logistics and do about this Texas Triangle thing, get some speakers that are very knowledgeable about it and what's happening. It's just unbelievable. Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, and everything within that triangle. We're about 6 miles off that, out of the triangle, but 2/3 of the state's population is within that triangle. 52 of the 53 Fortune 500 countries in Texas are within that triangle. It's all right here. It's on top of us. Anyway, thank y'all.
What time
And
is
thanks for
your,
letting me talk 3+ minutes.
what time is your meeting?
Pardon?
August 2nd, what time?
We meet at 12 noon, but as our group grows, we need to expand that or something. We may need to find a different venue. We've been meeting at the Chamber of Commerce boardroom. There's usually about 25 of us, and we're pretty full. We'll figure out a venue. If there's some way you can convey it back here, if you have interest, we'll put together a bigger venue for it or something. We may need to move the time at 12 noon on Friday, doesn't work.
Andy, what is the purpose of this group?
That's a good question. We don't know. Every time we get together, we say, what's everybody here for? It's just people that are interested in this phenomenon that's going on, the growth phenomenon. And you know, I've got a lot of friends that when I start talking to them about it, they're resistant because they don't want Lampasas to change at all. Well, I learned a long time ago, we're gonna change. The best way to do it is just through the proactive and embracing it and trying to plan for it. And yeah, we're not gonna be the sleepy little town 5 years from now. I don't think that we are right now. Well, we're not right now, but we were 5 years ago.
All right.
Does that answer your question? I still don't know.
No.
I'm not even gonna tell you, so we went through 30 names trying to decide what to call ourselves. Forward Lampasas is what we're stuck on right now. We may change that at the next meeting. All right, thank you.
Mr. Fish.
Thank y'all for having me. I'm Andy Fish. I think I know most of you. I'm the Keystone out of the little car museum across the street, Helm Station. One of the things that I've done for the last however many years with Debbie Reynolds is during Spring Hoe we have events that were, it's on the last day. One of the events that we had, which was last year, was we brought in Model T Fords and Model A Fords from all over the state to recreate a photo from 1929. Because of that event, I was approached by the Model T Ford Club of America, and they want to have what's called the Texas Tea Party. That's the largest collection of Model Ts that come together every year. This has gone on now for probably 30 or 40 years. This coming year in October, it's down in Kerrville. They bring in 100 cars, and no, they're bringing hundreds of cars. I'm sorry. Here's the problem: Lampasas can't accommodate this group. And I had to tell them that. I said, we can't bring in 200 people and put them in hotels around here because we don't have that kind of space. I talked to the Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Commerce says we're at capacity right now in the hotels that we have. Mostly it's from contractors that are in. On the other events that I've had, I can tell you that we've run into this before, where I can't have people spending the night. We had the Model A Ford Club drive up here from College Station. They spent 3 days here. They spent their money here, and but again, we couldn't bring anything larger than that group. The point is that Lampasas is growing. Lampasas is locked right now on the hotel occupancy. And you've got wedding venues such as like the Adelphia, and Debbie owned the Adelphia. That was the problem she ran into, is that here she could accommodate lots of people, but there wasn't hotel space for it. So the question is, how do you solve the problem? And the way I think you solve the problem is you look at what the current lack of utilization is of your business park out south here. There's 2 hotel chains that I'm aware of that express interest in building hotels, building a hotel here in Lampasas. And I think a great use of part of that property would be to allow a hotel to be built on that area there. The next question is what do you do with the rest of the property? For 20 years, nothing has happened out there, and I think that they should consider putting in housing. The reason I say that is because one of the things that the city's always wanted to have is we want to bring in business. The catch is, where are they going to work? Where do you think the people in Angimoto are living? They're living outside of here. So imagine they're paying property taxes over there, they're paying sales tax over there, and all those, the HEBs and everything's located there. Well, imagine though if you take that and you put residential in a hybrid solution out there, and I say hybrid because you have commercial, let's say, on 183, you've got the hotel that would be at the corner of 183 and the back street, and then you got residential out there. So now you're bringing in, first off, is the companies that are developing right now out west of here are buying huge chunks of land and they're putting in these huge residential projects. And so my suggestion, since I'm out of time, is I would like the city to seriously consider changing the zoning out there on that land to allow something other than what it is right now, which has not worked, is not working, and I don't believe will work in the future, and exchange that for immediate income off the property, long-term sales tax revenue, long-term property tax revenues, hotel occupancy tax revenues, and be able to bring in groups like the Model T Ford Club of America.
Any questions? Mr. Fish? Okay. Thank you. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter that is included in the agenda may do so at this time. Public hearing to receive citizens' comment will consider approval or denial or approval with modifications. To consider granting a replat of variance for lot 1 and 2 for properties generally located at 703 West Avenue C and 408 North Spring Street, Lampasas, Texas, Lampasas County.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So, this is kind of a unique situation. So if you look at page 22, it kind of shows you where we started. So this is a consideration for replat with variances to the single residential family SF10. The zoning board of adjustments approved the requested variances at the June 25th meeting with the condition that if the storage building or carport were to be removed, the new build would conform with the 6-foot setback. And I gave you a list of the variances that were approved on the agenda cover. I don't necessarily want to read it to you unless you want me to. That the planning commission recommended approval of the replat at the July 11th meeting as well. So if you look at page 22, this kind of shows you where we started. The lots actually went from west to east if you look at it from that perspective, and the houses were built, 2 houses were built on 1 lot. So it's kind of a unique situation. They're built back in the 80s. And of course, we know that you have 1 dwelling per lot. So he wanted to sell one of the houses. So we had to go through the replat process to get the line correctly. So now, instead of having 1A and 1B, which is what I did for the visual to show the planning and the ZBA commission, we actually have an actual replat, which is on page 23. And this actually shows you how the proper layout will look. And this is what's been recommended approval through the planning commission. Any questions?
Okay. 1.4, public hearing to receive citizens' comment, consider approval or denial or approval with modifications, a specific use permit for the accessory dwelling and an area zone single resident family 20 SF20 described as 0.94 acres, LHW Johnson survey, commonly known as 17 Dell Lane.
Yes, the property owner is asking for a specific use permit to allow for an accessory dwelling to the main structure. which is kind of gonna be referred to as a guest house in this instance. And what basically happened is they had about a 400 square foot garage that was kind of dilapidated, but once they got in there and started removing things from it, they realized the bones were good, so they wanted to reutilize it and repurpose it. So they went through and they kind of designed, which is on page 27, they kind of designed a layout for what they wanted to do for their guest house to be able to have their family and friends stay there when they're in town to visit. So the comprehensive plan does allow for a need for life cycle housing, the generations for similar to mother-in-law suites and accessory units. The planning commission did approve this July 11th at our meeting, and we just want your consideration this evening.
Questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 2.1, discussion of possible action concerning approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on June 24th, 2024.
I see no changes or alterations, and make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
3.0, consent agenda, discussion and possible action regarding the purchase and charges in excess of $4,000 from June 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2024. And discussion and possible action regarding the May 2024 investment report.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
4.0, boards and department reports.
This evening we'll not have an annual report. We'll do parks and the fire department will be in August.
5.1, city manager's operational report.
Mayor and Council, I know we have a lot of people sitting in the audience who have waited for a long time, so I'll be very brief. Cybersecurity, you should receive notification that we will be going through the cybersecurity annual training. If you have not heard anything about that, make sure Monica knows so she can get you hooked up. Golf course, they did have an advisory committee meeting today. I don't anticipate any recommendations or policy change coming to council. There were some suggestions on a number of items related to maybe updating the website, member communication, et cetera. We can certainly get Chris in here to provide you a little more input. Councilmember Morris was in attendance telephonically, but am I off the mark there, Council?
Not off the mark at all. There was some argument about earlier 2 times, but I think that out of the office probably has the best idea for maintenance season done out there. And, I think it's doing a good job.
Very good. I think I did mention maybe in an email about the wastewater treatment plant funding. We did receive an EPA funding amount of $1 million through the city's congressional representative. It is part of the FY24 federal budget process. There will be a 20% match. We did meet with the Jones Hebroy as well as Grant Administration. We will be taking some steps to get that underway. I do want to credit the former Economic Development Director. She was the one that researched and submitted that grant for consideration, and it's certainly a compelling need. Ajinomoto Foods North America, we have not reported back to you recently on that progress. It appears they are continuing to work with their consulting engineers to identify and mitigate sources of high pH, and also working on reduction of fat, soil, and grease, or fog. We have indicated to them that we don't really want to sit down and meet with them unless they're ready to talk about a comprehensive solution. So that's the position. If you think differently, please let me know. Western culvert, we previously reported to you about the age as well as the stormwater damage to the Western Street culvert between First and North. We have put plans and specifications together. We do possibly take that out to bid, and we're somewhat hopeful that the contractor for Second Street may have an interest in hopefully maybe saving a little mobilization charge costs. We do understand the current plans are 95% completion, just basically ready for a stamp. Hamilton EMS, that report is included, 354 calls in the county, 165 or 47% of total calls in the city of Lampasas. There were also 66 transfers out of Rollinsbrook Park. Food trucks, anytime a citizen comes to me with something that just they don't like about something within our ordinance, I typically say, you know what, I'll put it in a report. We'll see if it gets any traction. And that was the case with a property owner related to food trucks. It was actually a lemonade truck, I believe, on their vacant property in downtown vicinity. And of course, we also get kickback from brick and mortar folks that say, hey, why they have an unfair advantage because they're not paying property tax, et cetera. But I just simply put it on the report. If you have an interest in taking a look at that ordinance, we could probably clean up a little of the language, but if you wanted to open it up or if you felt like it was worthy of a look-see, as similar to what we're doing for SDRs, please let me know. We'll put it on the council agenda. Okay, plus we'll put it on maybe an agenda where we have a little lighter agenda than we have tonight. But we'll Becky, if we can place that. Tatum funding, Ryan reports that we are working with Tatum, possibly for some qualifying projects. They do have some funding available related to some of the flooding and storm damage that we received in May, and I think we'll take a look at the Avenue H culvert. It's a fairly narrow street, and it is a frequently flooded out area. Impacts, it is a redundant access to about half a dozen single-family dwellings, but we'll maybe take a look at that as well as a couple of other items we may include and take advantage of reimbursement of some of those costs we incurred and damages we incurred during that time. Campbell Park, we have started making ready for parking improvements. That was from the 2 lots that the council purchased a couple of months ago. We will be scraping that off. Looks like we'll have about 35 spaces, and we all are also working with EcoFlex, and they've really stepped up in terms of providing material for the wall that will be on the south property line. Gateway signage, got it out there on South 183. Take a look at that. Big thanks goes to Libby Blunser, Vision Lampasas, Metzger Stone, as well as the Bumpus family for providing the property. The city's inputs to this project was the foundation for the stone, as well as the relocation of the fence. And just to let you know, I will be out going to Texas Public Power Association meeting tonight through Wednesday afternoon. I'll be back in the office at that time, certainly available by phone. Thank you.
7.1, discuss and consider selection winner website photo contest.
I make a motion for entry number 1.
I'll second.
Thank you.
All in favor for what? So, what it is.
It is.
Thank you. Very good. 7.2, discussion of possible action regarding the ratification of purchase to repair 48 strands of damaged fiber optic cables that runs on aerial on city-owned utility poles, W/WW Animal Shelter, Collection Center, and the Public Works Barn in the amount of $10,560.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. On June 28th, internet went down at the Public Works Farm Collection Center and the Animal Shelter. These facilities are all serviced through the same fiber optic line. It was determined that the fiber optic line had been damaged. This project entailed locating, repairing, and replacement of the damaged 48 count fiber optic cable that runs aerial on city-owned utility poles to water, wastewater, Public Works Farm Collection Center, and Animal Shelter. This was an emergency repair that took place on July 18th. All work performed by this vendor is guaranteed, certified, tested, and labeled. This is an unbudgeted project, however, funds are available from another fiber project that we did not complete this year. Staff is asking for ratification of purchase due to the services provided by these facilities and the necessity to have the internet restored in a timely manner.
I move to approve the ratification of the purchase of Southwest Fiber Optic Communications LLC in the amount of $10,560 for repairs.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion and possible action to approve the Fall Pepper Merriweather Circuit sponsored by the Lampasas Kiwanis Club to be held on October 7th, 2024.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a reoccurring event. It happens pretty much every year. We normally do with the Kiwanis Club. They do the key equipment company that they do the circus, and it normally happens during the same time every year, but they didn't have one last year. But this is going to be through the ordinance where we have to require them to get a license. It's a $200 application fee. We just approve it, do a waiver for them, and then we make sure we have their license and their insurance and the approval from the school to host the circus at that location. So this evening, I'm asking to consider a motion for approval of a license application submitted by the Kiwanis Club and Key Equipment to operate a circus within the city limits of the city of Lampasas and to grant a waiver for operations in their schools, church, and private residences.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
I have a really quick. How come they don't do it at the airport anymore like they used to?
That's before my time, I have no idea. Since I've been doing this, they've been doing it at the same location, so I don't know. Sorry, I can find out.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
7.4, discussion and possible action to reappoint Mayor Pro Tem Morris to the Golf Course Advisory Board.
Mayor and Council, this board is a little different when it comes to council members. They actually run concurrent with the term. So this should have happened back in May when, or June at least, when it was reappointed, or when the 2-year term was up, to go ahead and reappoint him to stay on the Golf Course Advisory Board.
I'll make a motion to approve the reappointment of Mayor Pro Tem Zach Morris to the Golf Course Advisory Board.
Second. Any discussion?
Do you accept it? You want it? Accept.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed.
Thank you.
7.5, discussion and possible action regarding the award of Second Street roadway improvements project to the lowest bidder, JHL Construction, in the amount of $653,451.64 for the base bid and $178,257.55 for the additional alternative bid for a total of $831,709.19.
Mayor, Council, as discussed in workshop, staff recommends award of both the base bid as well as that alternate.
I'll make a motion to award the Second Street roadway improvements project to the low bidder JHL Construction for a total amount of $831,709.19, inclusive of both the base bid and the additional alternative
Second.
I'd like to make an amendment to that motion not to exceed 31. Is that okay?
The only thing I would say to that is there may be things that come up in construction, like any construction where there could be change orders. We hope that's not the case,
Do we agree on that?
but what's that?
Could that come back to us?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We could bring it, if there's usually any kind of substantial change order will come back to council. Sometimes within the contingency, you can allow for, certain items to overrun up to 15% if it's, let's say you miss a piece of something in the design, I hate to say, restricted to that, I understand what council's view would be on that. But we can definitely bring change orders back if that's the recommendation. I mean, typically we're gonna let council know anyways, but.
So if he wants to move them in, we need a second. If somebody wants to second, then we have to approve the first one. Approve the second one.
And one thing I would clarify too, just so everybody's aware, the way the bid structure was, it's per item. So it's, like I was saying, it's not a kind of lump sum contract where they're saying, hey, it's $850,000 and, not to exceed that. These have specific items, so if there's some sort of overrun, now the change orders come in when there's an exorbitant, more than typically 15% overrun of one item, then it typically comes back as, hey, we need to get approval of that. But typically, as long as there's no error in the structure of the quantified items, it is a bid. 100 of this item for this dollar amount equals that. If it runs, a little bit over, but typically it should be.
On an item, is that gonna save us money if we're under budget?
Correct. It would be that's correct. We're only going to pay for what they install. So if they say we're doing 25 yards of concrete right here and it ended up being 20, we're paying for 20 yards.
Can you go through with me what is budgeted and what's coming out of 2024? Again, I know you talked about
Yes.
the workshop, but
So good question. So what's actually going to come out of this year's capital outlay would be contingent on if they could get started before the end of the fiscal year. If they can't get started, then those funds, which is $450,000, would go back to the general fund. And depending on how we finish the year out, those funds carry forward, or not carry forward, can be budgeted again for that additional. But mobilization was the one thing I mentioned earlier. So if they somehow got started, we gave them a notice to proceed. Typically, you're giving them 30 days. If there was some way they got started in this fiscal year, typically it'd just be the mobilization fee and whatever else they invoice you, invoice for as far as the construction items.
Could possibly have money from in 2024 budget to cover the rest of this project.
Correct.
So we have a motion and a second. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to maybe clarify practically how this would happen. So we would take a look at putting together the FY25 budget. The shortfall that we have from our normal budget amount, $505,000 for paving, if they were not able to get started, we would typically include in the budget for FY25 a retained earnings, undesignated retained earnings revenue line of $200,000, and then use that 200 in addition to what we had budgeted to make up the difference. That would be then part of the budget process. We would do it that way. If there was a shortfall in other words, if the project was expended out of FY25, we would typically draw the difference from what we normally budget out of retained earnings or fund balance, and then put that in the budget revenue line, and then expend that in the paving line.
So we've got a motion and a second. We need to amend that.
No, I don't need to amend that. I'm good with that.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. No opposed.
Thank you.
7.6, discussion and possible action regarding the selection of contractor for solid waste contract by May 25th.
Mayor and Council, back in February, you directed staff to move forward with requests for proposals for solid waste services. The current contract with Waste Connections is up for renewal in May of 2025. It's provided any firms the opportunity to prepare appropriately for fleet, employees, site location, wherever they need it, and give enough time to be able to mobilize. Invitations to bid were published in the local newspaper on June 7th and June 11th. The request for proposals was published on the city website on June 5th. The pre-bid meeting was held on June 18th. The original scheduled date for bid opening was July 2nd. It was postponed until July 9th. The city proposals from 3 firms was Waste Connections, Waste Management, and Frontier Solutions. Staff feels the proposal from Waste Management should not be considered since the proposal ignored the city's scope of service. Staff has provided a attached spreadsheet showing base costs of services for each provider. Staff will discuss detailed information received from the three proposals upon request. So if you're looking at page 118, it kind of defines exactly what we received, residential, commercial for your dumpsters, and then central law pricing and some compactor pricing. So I highlighted basically what our current rates are. So like Waste Connections, they did not increase any of their fees, it's exactly the same as it is today. And then you have the Frontier Solutions, which shows you what their cost would be to the citizens today. So with residential hand pickup, currently right now would stay the same at $21.89. Frontier would go to $26.31, that's both for residential and commercial. You can kind of get down the line, you can kind of see that like the dumpsters were about $1 and $2 difference in pricing as the overall. And then as far as waste management, the prices were extremely higher, but they also wanted to change the scope to be able to provide 1 weekly service and then 1 month of bulk. And then wanted to do the automated system to where they provide cans and they just come once with the automated truck. So based on what we were asking, that was outside the scope. So if you look at page 120 and 121, I kind of highlighted in the RFP that was sent out that what we were asking for. So we were asking for residential, commercial waste is currently collected twice a week, and then we wanted the bulk pickup to be done once a week as well. So that was outside of what we're asking for, outside of the fact that the prices were extremely higher than what our systems are paying today. So I did go through on page 119 and kind of showed you what the criteria was as far as for best value, which is what we did for the procurement for this type of RFP. I did kind of go through and show the Waste Connections, Waste Management, and Frontier Waste Solutions, kind of the differences and what we're experiencing today versus what the actual packet was concerning with their RFP. So I don't necessarily want to read everything to you, but if you'd like me to go through them, I'm more than happy to. The only thing that we couldn't really do was current service with Frontier Waste Solutions. They actually are not applicable because we don't have any experience with them at all. They did provide, both firms did provide 5 references, which is what we asked. And we did do a survey to those references, trying to get their feedback. And we did receive 4 back from Frontier and only 2 back from Waste Connections. I attempted to get the other 3 from Waste Connections today, just to get some more feedback from them. And the one lady I talked to said they prefer not to. And then I didn't receive anything from the other 2. So I can pass these around if you'd like to look. Waste Connections currently, as you know, we do have pack-out days, we do have mechanical issues, we do have some unkept services that's not consistent with what our day-to-day requirements are. We do spend a lot of time on the phone with citizens or with Waste Connections trying to get the resolution for the customers. However, going forward, because they are the lower, if that's something that City Council chooses to move forward with, then we'll definitely be able to try to negotiate some terms and see what we can do to improve the service. Frontier Solutions, we have no relationship with, we don't know anything about other than the references that we did receive for them. So if you'd like to look through these, you're more than welcome to, and just get some feedback if you'd like.
Okay, it's costing the city time and money having to deal with these issues with West County right now. I'm glad we're picking up with our meeting citizens, from West County as well. I mean, we're spending money because of the rest of the time.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. I feel like we spend half our day on the phone. If we're not talking to a citizen about they haven't been serviced, we're talking about a citizen they were missed, or we're talking with Connections about something that happened. So it is very time consuming. The communication is great. We do get responsive from them. We do talk to them a lot. We have a really good relationship, but it's just not consistent. And I've tried to brainstorm with them and ask them, what are the drivers seeing? You're, watching them. Are they picking up too much bulk, which is why they're packing out? If there's something we can maybe change up the route so that the same customers aren't always missed, and maybe that will help some because they know what time they're supposed to get picked up. They know what they're not getting picked up. They have no faith in getting picked up the next day. So it's very hard because we spend a lot of time trying to stand our ground and say, they'll be there in the morning, and then they don't, and then we get a call. So it goes from utilities over to us, for us to get a Waste Connections, and it's a vicious cycle. So it's constant.
How often does that happen? Like daily basis?
Oh, every day we get a phone call about it. I mean, literally every day. And it could be something that was missed, something didn't get done, or they packed out.
And I know we've talked to them about that in the past, and when was this supposed to renew, or were we looking at renewal of the contract?
For waste
I thought we were
management,
gonna look at this a little bit early to give them time to possibly look at adding trucks, adding personnel.
Correct.
So that they didn't have that problem. Did they discuss that, address that? I mean.
no, I mean, we haven't discussed, I mean,
What I'm looking at is
The
item
proposals.
3 that anticipated quality of service and what vehicles they're planning on bringing, that's what they're currently using.
correct. Now, in their fleet schedule, it did not show that they had anything on site for 2 of the fields. One of them, they did have them on site. They did talk about the fact that they will not use trucks that are more than 4 years old. So they're trying to improve the services to where they don't have as many mechanical issues. But even still, like when you figure their hours that they can actually be on the ground, so when you figure if they have an hour delay or 2 hour delay because they have a mechanical issue or a maintenance issue, then that puts them out to where they're thinking that they're an hour and a half to get here, so they only got like 3 or 4 hours worth on the ground. So that leaves one truck out to be able to finish the route. So it's very cumbersome. So they have made improvements, but it's not, I haven't had a good week in a long time.
Where's your, I was gonna say, where's Frontier out of?
They're out of Hillsborough.
And Waste Connections, Wago, so it's basically pretty close to the same.
Correct.
And how does this affect the rates for our constituents?
$4.00.
Yeah, if you look, what I did is I actually included what the customer would be paid. So on page 180, be paid, would have to be charged. So on page 118, the green and the yellow, it shows you what currently they're paying, which like I said, Waste Connections was not going up on their rates. They wanted to retain us, they want to keep it the same. So those are their existing rates today, and that'll be the existing rates for May 2025, depending on any changes, of course. But Frontier is in yellow, so like I said, the customers would see an increase in their payment.
Do you know what the approximate expenditure that we're paying Waste Connection right now on a yearly basis? I know it's probably in the budget somewhere.
Yeah, I don't have that number, but.
It's 15, 1.5. I can tell you there.
Yeah, it's gonna be close to that.
And they also, I mean, besides residential commercial, they do our waste collections, but it would continue as well, our citizens.
That's, yeah, just kind of approximate 1.5, that's a lot of
Yeah.
The expenditure for solid waste 2 years ago was 1.259. 1 year ago, 1.355. Our projected year end is going to be 1.422. So yes.
And a decision does not have to be made this evening. You can look over this information, kind of read through it. I'll be happy to share. I've got 3 of their proposals. I can make some copies and give that to you if you want to look through it. They're very different as far as the methodical and the timeline and what they provided, and you will notice some differences in their presentation definitely.
The way I look at it is, it's been good connection, good communication. We can continue, or go with the low ball, continue the same service, we'll potentially pay a little bit more money, shot at better service.
I have one question, did they include like carts for the residents? Like,
Waste management did, and they
That's
want to go
all I-
automated,
yeah,
yes. Now,
Frontier did not.
any of them can provide them, and there's be a cost to our customers. I think they all at this point will offer automated service, because that's just the new technology and what everybody's doing. But that is not something we asked for, because it's something we do today. Now, not something we can't look at in the future, and we may have to change up our RFP going forward if we want to do that. But currently today, that's just how it was asked for.
I think that's, in my opinion, a lot of the reason why a lot of them miss is because we put, a lot of residents put a sack out there. And, you know, I know they know the route, but still,
Yes.
they get used to seeing a can or not.
But that's their obligation. They pick up either 5 bags it in our cans, and that's what they're supposed to pick up on a regular basis. So, I mean, like I said,
Oh, I'm not taking up for it.
whether it's a white bag or a black bag, it's still a trash bag.
Or your feedback from citizens, how are they, what do they think of Waste Connections?
Well, I mean, I haven't taken a poll by any means, but just based on the conversations we do have, there's several that have lost faith. Like I said, they don't take anything at our word. They are very upset when we talk to them. Some of them understand, but I mean, it is what it is. If you're constantly missed and you don't even know what your day is anymore, they've lost faith. I mean, if they have a Monday and Thursday trash day that's never picked up on Monday and Thursday, do they leave it out with a chance it might be picked up on Tuesday, or do they not? So that's kind of where their mind is, and I'm not talking until I'm blue in the face to my contacts and letting them know that that's what we're dealing with, because it is a small town and everybody talks. So when they know, when they hear the driver, they know what time it's supposed to be there. If they're not there by 1 o'clock, they call us. I mean, immediately, hey, something's going on. And that's how I normally will find out that there's a problem, they were delayed or something happened. And then I have to call and say, okay, what's the story for today? What's going on? Give me some feedback. Because not that they're not good at communicating, because like I said, we have really good rapport, but it's just not timely, it's not consistent. Because I have to do way more work than I should.
As we go forward, would it make sense to bring a representative in from each of the companies that we're bidding on?
They're here this evening.
Yes. What's that?
They're here this evening.
Oh, okay. All right.
If you want to hear.
I think ultimately, you have to think about what the lack of compliant service is worth. And we've got neighborhoods and subdivisions that are rarely picked up on their trash cans currently. And I wouldn't want that to happen to me. If I had to pay a little more, I would pay more for better service. I can't speak for 7,200 residents in the city of Lampasas, but I think I'm just trying to lay out the question for your consideration.
I mean, I can't text you anymore.
All right. Anything else?
Yes. Move to direct staff to enter negotiations. With Frontier Solutions to provide best value to citizens of Lampasas.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Point 7, discussion possible actions to consider approval or denial or approval with modifications and granting a replat variance for lot 1 and 2 for properties generally located at 703 West Avenue C and 408 North Spring Street, Lampasas, Texas, Lampasas County.
Mayor and Council, this item is listed during public hearing, and this on action to consider a motion to approve the replat with variances for lots 1 and 2 for properties located at 703 West Avenue C, 408 North Spring Street, Lampasas, Texas, Lampasas County.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
7.8, discussion and possible actions to consider approval or denial or approval with modifications on the first reading ordinance for a specific use permit, accessory dwelling in area zone, single residence, family 20, SF 20, described as 0.94 acres, LHW Johnson Survey, commonly known as 17 Dead Land.
Mayor and council, this item was assessed during public hearing, and at this time, I'm asking to consider a motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance to approve a specific use permit and accessory dwelling in areas in single residential family 20, described as 0.94 acres, LHW Johnson Survey, commonly known as 17 Deadland.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion and possible action to consider closing Western Street from 2nd to 3rd from 8 a.m. Saturday, September 21st.
Forgot Martin.
I'm sorry. Oh, thank you. I apologize. It's getting late, come on up. Discussion and possible action to consider interlocal cooperation agreement between the city of Lampasas and the fire department, the city of Lomita, to provide fire protection and inspection and investigation services.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I believe this is in your packet. It's an agreement that's been in existence since November of 2019 with the city of Lomita to provide investigation, inspection, fire protection. They reimburse us for time spent with the city of Lomita. I look back just a minute ago, over the past 5-year period, we've investigated 10 fires total in the city of Lomita. As far as inspections go, I do not know that we've conducted any inspections there. I changed a very small amount of the wording in the inspection services to 2.02. I felt like it left us open to blanketly accept inspections within their fee, and they do not have an adopted set of fire codes like we do here. So I felt that aside from an instance such as the school or possibly a foster home facility, we likely would not conduct any other inspection services for them. Other than that, the contract looks good. I do believe it is important for myself. There's 2 total arson investigators and 3 fire investigators within the fire department. It is a perishable skill, and fortunately, we don't use it all that often here within the city. That does give us an opportunity to keep our skill set up on the investigation.
I'll make a motion to approve the interlocal cooperation agreement between the city of Lampasas Fire Department and the city of Lomita to provide fire protection, investigation services, and some inspection services.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
7.10, discussion and possible action to consider closing Western Street from 2nd to 3rd from 8 a.m. Saturday, September 21st, 2024, to Sunday, September 22nd, 2024, through noon for setup, breakdown, cleanup, and to close 2nd Street for through traffic during the Western Street fundraising event for the Lampasas County Museum on Saturday, September the 21st, from 2024, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Chief Cummings had to leave early, so I'm taking care of this for him, but it's pretty self-explanatory. We just need to close between 2nd and 3rd to compensate for this event taking place. We will be able to, or try to do at least a block on either side of 2nd Street as well to help out with the actual staging of where the performer will be, just to protect that area as well.
I move to approve closing of Western Avenue from 2nd to 3rd Street from 8 a.m. Saturday, September 21st, 2024 through noon Sunday, September 22nd, 2024 for setup, breakdown, and cleanup to close 2nd Street. Through traffic during the Western Street fundraising event for the Lampasas County Museum on Saturday, September 21st, 2024 from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
7.11, discussion and possible action regarding the renewal of the city's health insurance coverage for city employees with Scott White Health Plan for October 1st, 2024, September 30th, 2025, and authorize the city manager to execute related documents.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As Philly had talked about earlier, when we had done the initial insurance quote, they did come back with 19.10. They did come back with, a counter offer of 11.72. However, that did drastically change part of the co-pays for the employees. So just as of this afternoon, we received another quote of 12.43%. So what is in your packet is incorrect. But they were able to do a custom plan for the city of Lampasas, so that our services that we have for both plans will stay the same. The employees will have the same co-pays that they currently have, and the increase will be at a 12.43%.
Make a motion to approve the renewal rates at a 12.43% increase and authorize the city manager to execute those documents.
Second.
Any discussion?
Plan is the same.
Plan is the same.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Y'all happy with it, apparently?
Yes.
That's the lowest it's gonna get on the raise percentage.
Oh, yes, yes.
All in favor? Discussion and possible action regarding the renewal of the city dental and visual insurance coverage for city employees with principal for October 1st, 2024, September 30th, 2025, and authorize the use of the city manager to execute related documents.
Our dental and vision insurance is through principal. We've had them for the last few years now. The vision is staying the same. There will be no change in that. And there is a 6% increase in the dental, which basically will come to $1.28 for the employee. For children, no cost to the employee only, 78 cents for employee spouse and $2.26 for employee family.
Make a motion to approve the renewal rates and authorize the city manager to execute those documents.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Thank you very much.
7.1-3, discussion and possible action to consider testing services provided by Rocky Engineering and Testing Laboratories, LLC, for third-party testing for the Hostess House and renovation project in the amount not to exceed $14,774.
Mayor and Council, this cost was not included in the project cost. This cost is borne by the city, as is typical with any construction projects for third-party testing. Primarily, this is for slump and strength testing of concrete, footers, as well as foundation. The scope does include some structural review. However, we think that our structural engineers will pick up the lion's share of that, so we're not anticipating getting close to the 1477, but it certainly is not to exceed.
I make a motion to approve testing services provided by Rock Engineering and Testing Laboratory LLC for the third-party testing for the Hostess House renovation project in an amount not to exceed $14,774.
Second.
Any discussion? Question?
So this is typically an expense that is paid by the city.
Absolutely.
It would not be normally included in. That was my question, is why wasn't this included in the original stuff?
Correct. The owner is typically responsible for any third-party testing. We don't want the contractor to test their own materials.
Correct.
And that's, I mean, I've never heard of it otherwise, to be honest with you.
Were there other companies that we looked at, or is this?
They actually did, and our architect reached out to two companies. One put in the bid, Rock, and the other one did not. In the past, we had used Langdon Foster. We used Langdon Foster for the skate park. We didn't reach out to them at this time. Rock did the initial geotech at the Hostess House as well.
Would we not supposedly include this in what the estimated cost there, or do that?
I would have to look back over their documentation. And to be honest with you, I probably made an assumption the council would not have made, that we're going to have to pick up third-party testing without communicating that to y'all. But, I mean, if you wanted to leave your motion to approve it up to 14, whatever, 7774, we can on our own accord reach out to Lyman and see if they're interested in bidding it. I don't think for the slump and the strength, it's going to be much different than what it would cost us to get it through rock.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
7.14, discussion and possible actions regarding Lampasas Central Appraisal District, LCAD, FY 2025 budget.
Mayor and Council, staff reached out to the Central Appraisal District knowing that they had finalized their budget to see if it was ready for council consideration, at which time the chief appraiser said it was. They did forward this, planned to forward this on Friday. The budget amount, so if you look on page 161, the budget amount is what they came up with on, I can't even remember the date of that meeting. Councilman Keel was there, Mayor Pierce was there, I was there, but this is what the board came up with as their number. I think the board. 11th, or maybe that was a follow-up.
Right.
It's kind of gone up and down, but this is the original budget that the board came up with on the first night. Actually, it was 890, wasn't it?
Yeah, because they had the original, I think it was 890, because they weren't sure on the health insurance.
Right.
So you figured high because of the health insurance.
Right. So actually, this is a little bit less than what the board came up with previously. It took 3 minutes to get back to this number. I believe that the entities will pay not that much in terms of the allocation, because some of that represents interest income. But council has the opportunity to now consider it. This does include the addition of one appraiser, but it's certainly a lot better than the original 1.1 million, I think, was budget.
100,000 bucks more.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the LCAD FY 2025 budget as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Move to adjourn.
Second.